All right, welcome back to our daily read aloud. Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH. It is Elf Day, so I am very elfy. And last time we were reading, Mrs. Frisby had finally got to see the rats. She went down into the rose bush, she met Nicodemus, and they all had a meeting and made her wait in a library. So what happened when she was in the library? Madeline?
Justin likes her.
Okay,
Yes.
Justin, we met a little mouse named Isabella, right? And Isabella likes Justin.
Yes.
Okay. Hayden? I'll get it in a minute.
She met this girl named Izzy or Isabella.
Isabella. She's the little girl mouse, right?
And she has a crush on Justin, which she's not old enough to get married.
Right. Okay. And what else was she starting to tell Mrs. Frisby? Because Mrs. Frisby kept asking her questions, and she was trying her best as a little girl to answer the questions. Zoe?
About the plan?
Yeah, she was telling her about the plan, and that some of the mice didn't like the plan. There was even one mouse named Jenner who left the colony because he didn't like the plan. All right, and what do we have one clue about what NIMH is. Josiah, do you remember?
The place that's snowy.
Okay, she said it's white, right?
And they left it, and the rats left there for some reason.
And they don't want to go back, right? Okay, so it's a white place. They don't want to go back, and they had to leave there. Hayden?
Maybe their king was trying to, like kill them or something? Like, if they had a king now?
Could be. Noah?
I think it's like Josiah said, it's snow there, so maybe it got too cold in the bunker and they had to move because none of the electricity worked already.
I will remind you, it didn't say it was snowy. She said, I think it was white. So I'm just going to, that was what Isabella said. Yes.
Refrigerator.
Okay, maybe. Eric?
I think maybe in Alaska.
Could be. All right, last prediction. I'll start reading. Madeline?
Maybe cloud.
Okay. We really don't know, right? And Isabella, she's a little girl, and she's never even been to NIMH, so we don't even know what she says is accurate. We will find out. All right, this chapter is called A Powder from Dragon. Okay, and the last thing I had read said, she, meaning Mrs. Frisby, was about to ask Isabella when the library door opened and Nicodemus, Justin, and Mr. Aegis entered. Another rat came with them, a stranger. Real quick.
When you were talking about like a dragon, he was saying, he said like the first one was that someone has to shut us in. So I think maybe the dragon hit him.
Could be. All right, a powder for dragon. The strange rat was named Arthur. He was stocky, square, and muscular, with bright, hard eyes. He looked efficient. You might call him our chief engineer, said Nicodemus to Mrs. Frisby, as indeed you might call Justin the captain of the guard, if we had any such titles, but we don't. Mr. Aegis thought Arthur should come along, though he didn't say why. So we still don't know what your problem is. Isabella was gone. She had dropped her papers on the floor again when the others had entered, and Justin, to her intense confusion and visible delight, had helped her pick them up. Why did that make her so happy? Zoe?
Because she likes him.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Izzy, he had said. How's the reading coming? It's fine, she said. I finished the 3rd reader last week. Now I'm on the 4th. The 4th reader already? You're getting quite grown up. At that, she almost dropped the papers a 3rd time and made a dash for the door. It did not matter, Mrs. Frisby noticed, if Justin called her Izzy, just so he called her something. Remember earlier she said her brother called her Izzy and she hates that. But when Justin called her Izzy, she didn't seem to mind. Nicodemus closed the door behind her, then sat down on one of the benches, facing Mrs. Frisby. The others sat down too, Mr. Aegis stretching his splinted leg in front of him. Nicodemus took the reading glass from his satchel, opened it, and through it gravely examined Mrs. Frisby's face. You will forgive the glass and the scrutiny, he said. When I lost my left eye, I also damaged the right one. I can see little close up without the glass. Indeed, not very much even with it. At length, he folded the glass and put it on the table. Now, he said, what is it we can do to help you? So Mrs. Frisby recounted once more the events that had led her to coming there, and at the end repeated what the owl had advised her to say. Move the house into the lee of the stone. She added, I don't understand just what he meant by that. Jeremy, the crow, says it means the side where there's no wind. But what good would that do? I think I know what she meant, said Nicodemus. In a broad sense, lee means the sheltered side. A bird flying over Mrs. Fitzgibbon's garden would notice something most of us would miss. He reached into his satchel and took out a sheet of paper and a pencil. He opened the reading glass again. As he talked, he drew a sketch. When a farmer plows a field with a big rock in it, he plows around the rock, close on each side, but leaving a triangle of unplowed land on each end. Mrs. Frisby's house is beside the rock, but will get plowed up and probably crushed, as the owl said. But if we can move it a few feet so that it lies buried behind the rock in the lee, then she and her children can stay in it as long as they need to. From the air, the way the owl sees it, the garden would look like this. He inspected the sketch through his reading glass and then placed it on the table. Mrs. Frisby climbed up on the bench and looked at it. It was a rough map, showing the garden, the big stone near the middle, and the way the furrows made by the plow would curve around it, rather like waves around a boat. Show me where your house is buried, said Nicodemus. Mrs. Frisby pointed to the spot on the sketch. I know where that cinder block is at, said the rat named Arthur. In fact, I thought about bringing it in, but I decided it was too long to haul. They had it tied on the top of the harrow for weight, and it fell off just as they were finishing the garden. Can you move it? Asked Nicodemus, pointing at the sketch, to this spot right here and bury it again. Yes, said Arthur. Shouldn't be that hard. Mrs. Frisby was delighted. Looking at the map, it all became clear, and she could see what a beautifully simple idea it was. When Mr. Fitzgibbon plowed, he would go right past their house. They would not have to move again until Timothy was well and until the weather was truly warm. She remembered again what her husband had said, how easy to unlock a door when you have the key. She had found the key, or rather, the owl had found it. Nicodemus asked Arthur, how long will it take? Depends. With a party of 10, a couple of hours. With 20, maybe an hour. We can spare 20, but it's still too long. He looked worried. So did Arthur. Yes, he said, we'll have to work at night, but even so, there's just no cover at all. It's wide open. We'll have to take care of Dragon, said Justin. Yes, said Mr. Ages, and with this leg, I can't do it. I'd never make it to the bowl, much less get back again. Mrs. Frisby looked at their baffled faces, felt her delight subsiding. Obviously, something was wrong. I don't understand, she said. I know about Dragon, of course, but... At night, said Justin, Dragon prowls the farmyard like a tiger, and you don't see him until he's on top of you. Then you can't move my house after all. Well, Justin said, ordinarily, he turned to Nicodemus. Should I explain it to her? Yes, said Nicodemus. Ordinarily, said Justin, when we have a long project to do at night, sometimes even by day, we make sure Dragon won't bother us. We put sleeping powder in his food. Mr. Ages makes it. It doesn't do the cat any harm, but he stays extremely drowsy for the next 8 hours or so. We station a sentry, remember that's a guard, to watch him, and we're free to work. You did it yesterday, cried Mrs. Frisby, remembering the figures toiling the wire through the grass, remembering how strangely disinterested Dragon had seemed when he saw her. I saw the cat sleeping in the yard. Yes, said Justin, but today Mr. Ages has a broken leg. Then he can't make the powder? It isn't that, said Mr. Ages. I've plenty of the powder. The trouble is, said Justin, it's Mr. Ages who puts it in Dragon's dinner bowl inside the farm kitchen. With his broken leg, he can't move fast enough. But why Mr. Ages, said Mrs. Frisby. Can't someone else do it? I'd be glad to do it myself, said Justin, but I'm too big. You see, Nicodemus explained, Mrs. Fitzgibbon feeds the cat in the morning and in the evening, and his bowl is always kept in the same place, next to a cabinet in one corner of the kitchen. There's a very shallow space between the floor and the bottom of the cabinet. A few years ago, when we conceived the idea of putting Dragon to sleep, We cut a hole in the floor just behind the cabinet. If we put it anywhere else, they'd see it. To reach the bowl, Mr. Ages crawls under the cabinet. When he gets to the edge, he makes a quick dash to the bowl, drops in the powder, and dashes back out of sight. But with a broken leg, he can't dash. We might try leaving some bait outside the house, said Justin. That worked once. Once out of a dozen tries, said Nicodemus. It isn't dependable, and we don't have much time. To be safe, we ought to move that block tonight. If we had some cat food, said Justin, thinking aloud. He might eat that, even on the porch, because he knows it's his. Maybe tonight I can go in through the attic and down into the kitchen. No use, said Mr. Ages. They keep it in a metal cabinet up on the wall. You couldn't get it without a crew, and that would make too much noise. Anyway, said Nicodemus, it would put off moving that block until tomorrow night. Then, Justin said, I guess what we do is stake out scouts wherever we can, try to keep track of Dragon, and hope for the best. Some nights he doesn't go near the garden at all. We might be lucky. Or we might not, said Arthur. I don't like it. We can't dig that block out without some noise, you know. Mrs. Frisby interrupted quietly. There is another way, she said. Does anyone want to predict what she might be thinking? Josiah?
She might go in because she's small.
Madeline?
Maybe they might dig underground and come up through the bottom of the house.
Okay. Emma?
The same as Josiah.
Same as Josiah? Zoe?
Maybe Jeremy will help.
Okay. All right, let's find out. Mrs. Frisby interrupted quietly. There is another way, she said. If Mr. Ages can get into the kitchen, so can I. If you will give me the powder and show me the way, I will try to put it in Dragon's bowl. Justin said quickly, No, it's no job for a lady. You forget, Mrs. Frisby said. I'm Timothy's mother. If you and Arthur and others in your group can take risks to save him, surely I can too. And consider this. I don't want any of you to be hurt, maybe even killed by Dragon. But even more, I don't want the attempt to fail. Perhaps the worst that will happen to you with luck is that you will have to scatter and run and leave my house unmoved. But then what will happen to us? Timothy, at least, will die. So if there is no one else to put the cat to sleep, I must do it. Nicodemus considered and then spoke. She's right, of course. If she chooses to take the risk, we can't deny her the right. To Mrs. Frisby, he added, all right, listen carefully. But you should know that the danger is great. It was in the same kitchen yesterday, running from Dragon's bowl, that Mr. Ages got his leg broken. And it was in doing the same thing last year that your husband died. And that's where we'll stop.
No.
Well, the next page is chapter.